what you do to me. I will forgive you, but I can't forget. And welcome to the State of the Tourism Industry Conference here at the beautiful Shore Club. Doug, I just had the pleasure of listening to your presentation. Why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
My name is Doug Lansky, and I live in Stockholm currently. Didn't always do that. I've been like 20 years there. I started out as a travel writer.
Okay.
First, started out as a backpacker. Did 2.5 years of backpacking around the world. Became a travel writer who never took press trips.
Okay.
And I just did weird stuff. Like I'd go to sumo wrestling school in Japan, and I'd test drive Ferraris in Italy, and I did that. I signed a 5-year contract for a weekly column. Did national public radio at the time. Did some books. Did some TV show stuff. And then sort of morphed into this public speaking thing. First talking to kids about how to see the world, the college students, and then suddenly, like Visit Florida wanted me to come. I didn't know what I was going to tell them, and I listened to the whole conference. I'm like, oh, okay, these guys don't really see much from the traveler perspective. And I kind of came in more through the traveler's perspective.
Right.
And my interest is, I would say if I had to sort of put an umbrella theme to it, it's how do we make tourism better?
Right.
Better for the visitor, better for the locals, better for the environment, better for all the stakeholders.
Right.
Can we do that?
Well, Doug, I mean, that's what everybody's focused on, right? How do they create that experience that's win-win-win for everybody along the way?
Yep.
And some of the things that you talked about were simplistic in their design, yet incredibly impactful. You must see that over and over again in your travels and must say to yourself, if only this place did this, and you're connecting those dots.
Yeah, I sort of, when I talk to some of the ministers, so I often stick around and help consult. And sort of what my consulting is I'm shortening the learning curve. I'm like, okay, I see you're going down this path. You guys seem to be leaning this way. True, yes. These guys did that 4 years ago. I can put you in touch with that Minister of Tourism. Why don't you guys connect and you can skip all the mistakes they were making?
Yeah.
And that could be a helpful conversation. So I kind of play a role as a facilitator, or I can just point it out myself. And sometimes they hand me their master plan that they paid whatever, some giant consulting group like $500,000, $3 million for, and it's collecting dust on the shelf. And I look at it, some senior vice president secured the deal, and then once they did, they sent in a bunch of 25-year-old business students to do it who have no background in tourism, and they just did conventional wisdom baloney. I go through the master plan and go, well, this makes sense to me, this doesn't, this doesn't, this does. Maybe think about this, and we have a discussion about it, and then hopefully, it's like I feel like a teacher going through the test scores.
Yeah.
But that's got my own spin on it, of course, and I'm very open about that. That I have no agenda, but I have an opinion.
Right.
And I just feel that if I can be honest and transparent with where I'm coming from, that comes across, and that tends to resonate well within the industry.
Well, it did come across, Doug. I mean, I listened to the way you spoke, and it's coming from a place that I want to help. Like I've seen this stuff play out in other places.
Yeah.
I can help here as well.
Yeah.
And
it's frustrating sometimes.
Well, I'm sure it's frustrating, but you seem to me, Doug, like a guy that's giving of your knowledge and giving of your advice, because you know what it's like to be on the other side of that experience.
You know, not everyone's receptive or ready to change. If you're in a relationship with a woman, one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is if they come home after a rough day at work, the job that you have is to sit there and understand that they had a bad day. How was your day? Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. I'm going to sit here and pour wine.
Right.
And then not solve any of their problems.
Right.
Just listen and kind of go, that sucks, and relate.
Right.
And sometimes that's what a lot of these people need. They're just frustrated and they want to vent. They're not really ready to change. And if your wife says to you, you know, I keep tripping on my shoelaces all day and my nose is broken and bloodied, even if it's as obvious as saying, well, why don't you tie your shoes? Don't say it. You know, and even if they're begging for an answer, sometimes they're just not ready to go down that path. And that's kind of part of the art of this whole thing, is trying to figure out which destinations are ready to take that step to improve things and which just want to kind of vent a bit.
I love the way, I've never heard it described that way from like a consulting point of view, but you're so right. I mean, sometimes people just need space to talk it out and to tell, okay, here's what we're doing with it. There will come a time when they'll say, what do you think and what are your thoughts? And maybe that's the time you inject in.
You can maybe say, well, have you looked at this model?
Right.
What's that model? Yeah. Oh, well, they've been doing it like this for 10 years, and I could get some figures for you if you're interested. You know, it's like, it's can't come in with the hard-hitting stuff.
Right.
I leave that to McKenzie and those guys. I've got a little bit more of a softer approach, I think.
Doug, I can't help but think in this industry, and in most industries actually, but specifically in tourism, stories matter. The stories of what's happening matter so much. And are we missing that? Are we telling the stories well enough?
Often, no. Well, here's an interesting way. So the Great Wall of China. On a good day, in each direction, you can see 150, 100, maybe 200 miles. More likely when it's smog, 50 miles. So that's all you can see. But you're only there because it's 10,000 miles in total, not because of the part you can see. So the part beyond what you can see is the story, right? And if it was only as big as the part you could see, you wouldn't go to see it, which is kind of strange. Now, if we did that with the Mona Lisa, and I let you see 0.1% of the Mona Lisa, you got to see her pupil. That's it. You wouldn't go to see that.
Right.
So for some things, we're missing a story. For some things, we aren't. You know, like it doesn't apply.
Right.
And I think it's case by case basis. There's opportunities to, like I think I mentioned with this hotel room. If you're in a hotel room and you say, hey, this happens to be carbon neutral, that adds value.
Yeah.
But if you're in a hotel room, and to some people, and if you're in a hotel room and you say, hey, there's some books here you can read, maybe it doesn't add so much value. But for other people, that could add a lot of value.
100%.
And so it's like we're looking for ways to add storytelling or value in different ways to attract different kinds of visitors. And the better you know them, the better you can apply it.
Doug, I know that you're a busy guy. You got a busy agenda. It was a real pleasure to have you on this show, but I'm going to put you on the spot right now, and I'm going to ask you a tough question for a guy that's traveled so much like yourself.
Yep.
What was the best experience you ever had traveling?
Favorite place.
Not necessarily favorite place, favorite experience.
Okay, I'll give you this. I did this column for 5 years. And sometimes you go to a movie, I'd say like this, sometimes you go to a movie and everyone says, this is the best movie ever, you're gonna love it. And maybe it was a great movie, but you had so much expectation. So some of my favorite things were not necessarily, I'm not gonna say they were my favorite, it was like I had no expectations.
Right.
I remember I went in and I got to work for the European Sand Sculpting Championship to write an article. No idea. And that was mostly shoveling sand. I met the greatest people. We all stayed in the same hotel. It was sponsored by a brewer. We drank for like 7 straight days, and then we won. Right. So I was like the European Sand Sculpting Championship team. I know nothing about sand sculpting, and I had no expectations going in, and I left going, that was just one of the most amazing weeks ever. Great people, plenty of beer. We accomplished something that I had no idea I could do. The unexpected adds a lot to it.
The unexpected. What a great answer. Well, what a pleasure it's been to be in conversation with you, Doug. I've been in probably 800 conversations on this podcast.
And this was your favorite.
And well, I've never had the European sand sculpting champion on, so it's a real privilege to have you. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.